Hey there! Gearing up for your IBA admission test? You already know how crucial a great vocabulary is. In this explainer, we're going to make learning a whole lot easier. We're going to break down 25 high-frequency words into 5 simple groups to really help you lock them in for your exam.
So, here's the game plan for today. We'll kick things off with words that can trip you up because they sound alike. Then we'll dive into words that describe character. After that, we'll check out words for people in peaceful times, then some action words, and finally, we'll wrap up with words about big ideas. Trust me, grouping them like this makes them so much easier to remember.
All right, let's jump right into our first section. We're looking at words that can be a little tricky, either because they sound the same or mean something very similar. Nailing the small differences between them, that's going to give you a huge advantage on your test.
First up, we've got a classic pair that trips a lot of people up. Marshal versus Marshal. Marshal, with a T, M-A-R-T-I-A-L, is all about war and the military. You've probably heard of martial law or martial arts. Now, marshal, with an S-H, M-A-R-S-H-A-L, is usually a verb. It just means to gather and organize things. A general might marshal his troops, or you might need to marshal your thoughts before a big presentation.
Okay, next we have the word vaunt. It's a verb, and it means to boast or brag about something, but with way too much pride. It's got a pretty negative vibe. For example, you might say, the team vaunted their victory, which kind of suggests they were showing off a little too much.
Now, a word that means almost the exact same thing as vaunt is boast. To boast is to talk with too much pride. You could say, he boasted about his score on the test. They both have that show-off feeling. The main difference? Vaunt is just a little more formal, a little less common than boasts, but you can pretty much use them interchangeably.
All right, next up is another really strong verb, vituperate. This word means to criticize someone using incredibly harsh, angry, and abusive words. We're not talking about simple criticism here. This is a full-on verbal attack. For instance, the angry customer began to vituperate the helpless cashier.
And just like vaunt has boast, vituperate has a powerful partner, lambast. To lambast someone is to criticize them very, very harshly, and it's often done in public. You'll see this one a lot in the news, like, the press will lambast the politician for the mistake. Both words mean strong, nasty criticism, but you'll probably see lambast used more often today.
Let's move on to section 2. Here, we're looking at adjectives that describe different qualities. These are perfect words to have in your back pocket for describing people, things, or even attitudes.
Our first word is ductile. In science, it's used for metals, like gold, that you can stretch into a super thin wire without it breaking. But here's the cool part. We can use it for people, too. A person with a ductile personality is flexible and can adapt to new ideas or situations easily. It's a really positive quality.
Now, a word that's very similar to ductile is pliable. It also means something is easy to bend or shape, but pliable is often used to describe someone who is easily influenced. For example, a young child's mind is pliable. This can be a good thing, but it can also suggest that someone is a little too easy to control.
And of course, what's the total opposite? That would be stiff. Stiff means something is rigid and really hard to bend or change. You can have a stiff neck for sure, but you can also call a person stiff if they're very formal, not relaxed, and maybe not open to new ideas. It's the direct opposite of ductile and pliable.
This table really lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? On one side, you've got flexibility, with words like ductile and pliable. On the other, you've got rigidity, represented by stiff. Thinking about words in these opposite pairs is a fantastic trick to help you remember them.
Here's another interesting comparison for you. The word puerile describes behavior that's childish and silly, but in a bad, immature way. You know, making puerile jokes during a serious meeting is not a good look. Comic, on the other hand, is positive. It just means something is funny. A comic movie makes you laugh. So what's the key difference? Puerile is negative, comic is positive.
Okay, moving into our third section. This one is all about words that describe people in certain roles, their situations in life, and ideas related to peace and quiet. So here we have 3 really handy nouns. First, the incumbent. That's just the person who currently has a job or official position. In an election, the incumbent is the one trying to get reelected. Next, a retiree is someone who has finished their working career. And finally, matrimony is just a formal word for marriage or the state of being married.
Now let's contrast 2 really beautiful words.
Solitude means being alone, but it usually has a positive feeling. It's when you choose to be alone to think or relax. Halcyon, on the other hand, is an adjective that describes a perfect, peaceful, happy time. But, and this is key, it's always in the past. People love to talk about the halcyon days of their youth, remembering a perfect time from long ago.
All right, time for section 4. And this one is all about action. We're going to look at some verbs that describe doing things and then what happens as a result.
I really like this slide because it tells a little story. First, you excavate, which means to dig something up or uncover it. You can excavate ancient ruins, or you can excavate data to find answers. Next, you erect something, which means you build it or set it up. You can erect a building or erect a new system. And finally, you have the subsequent results. That word just means what comes after. So, you excavate information, erect a plan, and enjoy the subsequent success. And the last action word for this section is a really important one: forbear. It means having the self-control to stop yourself from doing something you really want to do. You know, if you're in a heated argument, it's very wise to forbear from shouting. It shows a lot of maturity and patience.
And just like that, we're at our final section. Here we'll cover words that help us talk about amounts of things, individual pieces of a bigger puzzle, and some really major ideas.
Here is another awesome pair of opposites, this time about how we handle resources. Parsimony is a noun that means being extremely unwilling to spend money or use resources. Now, being careful with money is good, but parsimony has a negative feel to it. It suggests someone is just too cheap. The opposite is being wasteful, which means using your resources carelessly.
To wrap things up, we've got 3 fantastic words for some pretty big ideas. First, a plethora is a huge, often excessive amount of something. You could say there's a plethora of options on the menu. Next, a strand is a single piece of a bigger, more complex thing, like a single strand of DNA or one strand of an argument. And finally, a panacea is a perfect cure-all, a solution for every single problem. It's a key word because we often use it to say that something like that doesn't really exist.
And that brings us to a really deep question, using our new word. Is there ever a true panacea for massive, complex problems like poverty or climate change? Or do these huge issues always need many different, smaller solutions working together? You know, thinking about big questions like this is exactly why having a rich vocabulary is so powerful.